Going to call this segment What Are They Thinking? Or the subtitle to it is California's plan to bankrupt itself. It reminds me of something from one of the old Rocky and Bullwinkle segments. And I have a press release here from Deborah Bowen, who, for many of our listeners, is the California Secretary of Fate. This is State, I'm sorry. That's a news release here, but for many people, this may seem like fate. Wealth tax initiative enters circulation. It's dated February 3rd, so it's been around for a while here, but you have to look at what's coming on to some of the propositions here. What this does is impose a wealth tax initiative constitutional amendment and statute, which imposes one-time tax of 55% on certain real and personal property in California, exceeding $15 million if single, $20 million if married, imposes a one-time tax of up to 54.3% on income exceeding $5 million when the resident dies or leaves California, which means they're confiscating half of your estate is what they're doing there. And even if you try to get out of the state, imposes an additional 17.5% tax on total incomes exceeding $150,000 if single, $250,000 if married, 35% if incomes exceed $350 or $500 if married, creates tax credits, yada, 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 yada. What are they thinking, Jim?
You know, this is the most insane thing that I've seen about it. They're trying to get this on the November ballot, and they need to get about 695,000 signatures. So if you live in California, you see these people out in front of the supermarket. John, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. But they have to get 695,000 signatures by July 1st in order for this to go on the ballot in 2010. Now, the purpose of this, you might say, well, this is good because they're trying to clean up the budget. Now, think of this. Think of if you're a property owner. Let's say you own a ranch. You own apartment complexes. You own rental property. And it's worth $15 million. They're talking about a one-time tax of 55%. So let's just round this off and say you have $20 million worth of property. What they're talking about is they would come in one time and charge you $11 million in a one-time tax. Now, what do you think that's going to do to somebody that owns rental property, owns a ranch, a dairy farm, or any kind of investment real estate, or maybe you're wealthy enough to afford a home that's worth that kind of money. Maybe you live in Beverly Hills or Marin County or Rancho Santa Fe or someplace. Think what would happen if they come in and they impose a tax. And folks, this is serious. This isn't a joke. This is an actual ballot. So there's one thing, John, you would have to go out. Most people that own property may have some kind of mortgage. And even if they don't have a mortgage on it, you know, if you own property, it's usually not liquid. So you would have to go to a bank. Good luck trying to borrow money from banks in this kind of environment. This in itself is very insane. Or, John, they say real property and personal property. So what if you own a business? What if you own, I don't know, a stock portfolio or rental, whatever it is? You would have to come up with a 55% tax. And then you're thinking to yourself, this is crazy. I'm getting out of here. Well, if you try to get out of here, then they hit you with the 54% exit tax. So that's bad enough in itself.
It is so funny, Jim. 5 years ago, we were talking about that here on the program. And we said as the flight continues from California, they're going to try to seize the money as you take it out of the state. And here it is in black and white.
Yeah. And then on top of that, what are they thinking if you're single and you're making $150,000? Think what would happen if they start imposing income tax of 17.5%, or if you make $350,000, if you're single, they'd take 35%. Now, bear in mind that next year, with the repeal of the Bush tax cuts, we're going to 43% tax rates in this country because you have 39.6 federal, and then you have a 2.9% Medicare tax, and then in 2013, that Medicare tax goes to 3.9%, so you're talking about a 44% federal tax, and then you're also talking about a 3.9% tax on all investment income. And, John, this is just absolutely insane. You know, California has raised income taxes 2 years in a row. We raised them in 2008. We raised the top income tax bracket 1 full percentage point from 9.25% to 10.25%. Then in 2009, we raised all tax brackets by 0.25%. So the top tax rate in California is now 10.55. You add that to the 43% federal tax next year. So in California, you're going to be at almost 54% combined federal and state, even without this proposal. You start raising these tax rates to 17.5% and 35%. Think of somebody, John, that a married couple, let's say a husband and wife, professionals, let's just say they make $350. Now, for those of you in other parts of the country, you may think, wow, $350 is a lot of money. In California, it isn't. This doesn't put you in Beverly Hills. But let's say you have a house that's based on that kind of income with the mortgage. You have $1 million, $1.5 million house. You have your property taxes in California, which could be as high as 1.9 to 2%. You have your regular federal tax, and then all of a sudden California comes in and says, we're going to raise your income taxes to 17.5 or 35%. John, think what that's going to do. What they would do is the tax would be so high, individuals wouldn't be able to make their mortgage payments, their car payments. This is absolutely the most insane thing. And the other thing they talk about this isn't to just lower the budget. They're also talking about they would instruct that part of this money would be going to purchase the common stock of weapons manufacturers, petroleum companies, automotive, media, and financial companies to influence their environmental policies. So what they would be doing is confiscating wealth and using it to buy interest in public corporations in order to control how the corporation is run and the various social policies of that corporation. This is outright, John, this is something you would see probably in the former Soviet Union when communism was running the country, or that was the economic philosophy, or let's say in China under Mao. I mean, this is absolute confiscation of wealth. As insane as this is, so you either have to look at this from one of two ways. Either one, even the fact, if this makes it on the ballot and does not get passed, what are you thinking if you're running a business in California? What are you thinking if you own real property in the state of California? And folks, this is no joke. We're going to be putting this up on the accompanying materials to this broadcast so that if you live in California, you run a business, you own property, or you're making more than $150,000 a year as a couple, you can see what the state of California is thinking of proposing here. I mean, this is absolute insane.
Well, you must admit, Jim, there are some really kooky, wild stuff being placed on the ballot. One of the ones that's really of concern, the California Citizens Initiative, now this is in California, by the way, would hold candidates for public office, government officials and employees and members of the media criminally liable for intentionally making a false statement of, quote, material fact, end quote, about legislative acts, elections for public office, or the employment or dismissal of government employees. Now, according to an editorial in the Orange County Register, this probably will not become law. But look at it this way. They're actually trying to put it into law, and what it would do is it would have a horrible dampening effect on freedom of speech. Let's take the health care bill, for example. How much information and misinformation flew back and forth during that health care debate. Now, if you made a statement under this bill that you willfully, now how do you prove willful intent here when you're trying to evaluate a complex bill like the health care bill? You willfully make a false statement. It's a criminal offense, and we're talking about a $10,000 to $500,000 fine and 2 to 10 years in prison. This is insane, Jim.
What they're doing, John, is with the new media, and especially with the explosion of news on the internet and alternative media sources, whether it's talk radio or the internet, what they're trying to do is a lot of the actions of our government officials are now coming under closer scrutiny. And what they want to do is shut that down, and this is one way that they would do it. There's also, at the federal level, with the FCC, they're trying to implement and shut down and start to control speech on the internet and on talk radio. They've been doing this periodically over the last decade. They've made several attempts to do this, and they haven't been able to do it through legislation, so they're hoping they can do it through regulation. And what they're trying to do, John, is our government officials do not like the public finding out what it is they're doing. And that's what this free speech bill would do, is by, once again, how do you prove willful intent And what it could do is force people like those of us here at Financial Sense or other media outlets, to go out and hire an attorney that you're going to have to hire to defend yourself against the government attorneys. So what they're trying to do is shut down free speech. As crazy as this is, John, this isn't the end of it. There's more crazy things they're trying to get on the ballot. The legislators are just running us to the ground. They're kind of like Greece. You think Greece is bad, California is even worse.
The legislators, both here and in Greece, don't seem to understand where you're at. That's what's really spooky. If these people are running the state, they don't understand where you're at, what the situation is, and how desperate things are going to become. But it is the end game of socialism. That's something you have to point out. Socialism always dies this kind of a death. We're continuing here at the Financial Sense News Hour at financialsense.com.